two 18-year-old Apache sisters asked the rancher for shelter. He said, "Only if you'll be my wives before dawn." The words hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Ayana stared at the weathered man standing in his doorway, rain streaming down her face, her sister Kay gripping her arm with trembling fingers. What kind of man makes such a demand in a storm? Stay tuned to Narrative Odyssey to find out. They had walked for 3 days through hostile territory, dodging men who wanted them for reasons they couldn't speak aloud, only to find refuge with someone who seemed no different. But something was wrong with this picture. The rancher's eyes held no desire, no hunger, only a strange kind of fear. His hand shook as he spoke the words, like he was repeating something he barely understood. Behind him, candles flickered in patterns that seemed almost ritualistic, and strange symbols were carved into the wooden beam above his head. "That's the law," he said, but his voice cracked like a boy's. What secret is he hiding? Keep watching Narrative Odyssey to uncover the truth. That's what has to happen. What law? What tradition demanded such a thing? And why did his face look like he was more terrified of his own words than they were? The storm was getting worse. In the distance, they could hear something else. Hoofbeats getting closer. The men who had been tracking them for days were almost here, but now they faced an impossible choice. Accept the stranger's bizarre demand, or face the certain brutality waiting for them in the darkness. Ayana looked into the rancher's eyes one more time. That's when she saw it. Something that changed everything. Something that made her realize this night would be nothing like what any of them expected. Because the biggest mystery wasn't what he wanted from them. It was why he looked like he was trying to save them from something far worse than marriage. The lightning split the sky like a wound, illuminating Boone Carter's weathered face as he stepped back from the doorway. The two Apache women stood dripping on his porch, their dark hair plastered against their heads, eyes wide with something between desperation and defiance. Ayana, the older sister, straightened her shoulders, despite the cold rain soaking through her worn leather dress. "We need shelter until morning, nothing more." Boone's jaw tightened. He glanced past them into the darkness, where the storm raged with unusual violence for this time of year. His cattle would be scattered across 3 valleys by dawn, and his roof leaked in 4 places. But that wasn't what made his hands shake. "I can't do it," he said, his voice rough as sandpaper. "Not unless..." He stopped, the words catching in his throat like fish bones. Kaya, the younger sister, pressed closer to Ayana. She had noticed something her sister missed. The way Boone kept looking over their shoulders, as if expecting company. Bad company. Unless what? Ayana demanded, rain streaming down her face like tears. Boone ran a hand through his grey-streaked hair. His grandfather's words echoed in his mind, spoken on his deathbed 3 years ago. When Apache women seek shelter in the storm, and dark riders follow their trail, only marriage bonds can protect them. It's the old law, boy. The only law that matters when blood runs hot. At the time, he'd thought it was delirium talking. Now he understood it was survival. "Only if you'll be my wives before dawn," he said, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. Ayana's hand moved instinctively to the knife at her belt. "You're insane." "Maybe," Boone said, stepping aside to let them see into his cabin. "But look at my walls." The sisters followed his gaze. Carved into the wooden beams were symbols, not mystical markings, but practical warnings left by travelers over the years. Messages about safe water, dangerous crossings, hostile territories. And there, near the door, a fresh carving that made Ayana's blood run cold. 3 vertical lines crossed by 1 horizontal. The mark that meant hunters tracking women. "Death follows." "Who made that?" she whispered. "Jim Fletcher 2 days ago," Boone said. Said there were men asking about 2 Apache sisters in town. Said they weren't the kind who take no for an answer. Boone's eyes were hard as flint. Said they'd be here by midnight. As if summoned by his words, The distant sound of horses cut through the storm. Hoofbeats on wet ground, getting closer. Kaya grabbed her sister's arm. Ayana, those are the same men who… I know. Ayana cut her off, her mind racing. They had escaped those men once. Barely. 3 nights ago. But they wouldn't escape twice. Not in this storm. Not with nowhere left to run. She looked back at Boone, whose face held no desire, only grim determination. Why marriage? Why not just hide us? Because, Boone said, already moving toward his rifle rack. Married Apache women under a white man's protection have legal standing. Unmarried ones. He didn't finish the sentence. The hoofbeats were getting closer, much closer. And Ayana realized that this strange, terrifying night had only just begun. The door exploded inward with a crash that shook the entire cabin. Clyde Hargrove filled the doorframe like a bear, water streaming from his black coat, his pale eyes scanning the room until they found the sisters. "There you are, pretty ones," he growled, stepping inside without invitation. 4 more men crowded behind him, all armed, all wearing the same predatory smile. "Been chasing you for 3 days through this god-forsaken country." Boone stepped between Hargrove and the women, his rifle trained on the intruder's chest. "You're trespassing on my land, Hargrove. Get out." Hargrove laughed, a sound like gravel in a bucket. "Your land? This whole territory is changing hands, Carter. New mining operations up north need workers. All kinds of workers." His gaze lingered on Kaya, who pressed closer to her sister. "We're not workers," Ayana said, her voice steady, despite the terror coursing through her veins. "We're people." "Not according to the law," one of Hargrove's men said. "Apache women caught off reservation land are considered vagrants. We're just doing our civic duty." Boone's finger tightened on the trigger. "That's not how the law works, and you know it. Depends on who's interpreting the law." Hargrove said. He took another step forward, ignoring the rifle pointed at him. "See, Carter, you can shoot one of us, maybe 2, but not all 5. And when you're dead, we take the girls anyway." Ayana felt time slowing to a crawl. In her peripheral vision, she could see Kaya trembling, could hear Boone's labored breathing, could smell the rain and mud and violence that filled the small cabin. Everything her grandmother had taught her about survival came flooding back. When cornered by wolves, become something they don't expect. "I accept," she said suddenly. Everyone froze. Hargrove blinked in confusion. Boone's rifle wavered slightly. Kaya stared at her sister in shock. "Accept what?" Hargrove demanded. Ayana stepped forward, chin raised. "His proposal. We accept marriage to Boone Carter under tribal law and territorial law. Witnessed by all present." She grabbed Kaya's hand. "Both of us. Right now." "The hell you do?" Hargrove snarled. "Those girls are coming with us." "No," Boone said, understanding flooding his face. "They're not, because under territorial statute 247, married Apache women under white protection cannot be removed from their husband's land without a federal marshal's warrant, and the nearest federal marshal is 3 days' ride from here." Hargrove's face turned purple with rage. "You can't marry them without a preacher." "Actually," Ayana said, her voice gaining strength, "under Apache law, witnessed vows spoken before dawn create a binding marriage. Your presence here makes you legal witnesses, whether you want to be or not." The silence stretched like a bowstring. Rain drummed on the roof. Lightning illuminated the faces of dangerous men, realizing their prey had just become legally untouchable. "This is horse shit," one of Hargrove's men muttered. But Hargrove was studying Boone's face, looking for weakness, for doubt. What he found there made him take an involuntary step backward. "You'd really do it?" he asked. "Marry 2 Apache girls to spite me?" Boone never took his eyes off Hargrove. "I'd marry them to save them. Whether that spites you is just good fortune." Hargrove's hand dropped to his gun. The cabin held its breath. And that's when they heard something that changed everything. Another horse approaching through the storm. But this rider wasn't one of Hargrove's men. This one was riding hard, like someone bringing news that couldn't wait until morning. The riders were less than a mile away now, their horses' hooves pounding against the muddy ground like war drums. Boone loaded his rifle with steady hands, but Ayana could see the sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold. How many?" she asked, peering through the rain-streaked window. 5, maybe 6. Boone checked his ammunition. Led by Clyde Hargrove, he's been tracking Apache women for months, selling them to mining camps up north. Kaya's face went pale. Mining camps? Ayana didn't answer, but her grip on her knife tightened. They both knew what happened to women in mining camps. It was a fate worse than any marriage proposal, no matter how strange. "Your grandfather's law," Ayana said suddenly. "Explain it, all of it." Boone hesitated, then set down his rifle. He lived with the Mescalero tribe for 2 years when he was young. "Learned their ways," he said. "When Apache women are hunted by bad men, and they seek shelter with someone who can protect them, marriage creates a blood bond that even the territorial law recognizes." He paused. "But it has to be willing, and it has to be before dawn, or it doesn't hold." "Blood bond," Kaya whispered, "means if anyone hurts you after we're wed, they answer to me, and I answer to tribal law as much as territorial law. Makes killing you or taking you a hanging offense. Even for men like Hargrove." The hoofbeats stopped through the storm. They could hear voices, rough, angry voices, planning something in the darkness. Ayana closed her eyes, weighing impossible choices. Accept marriage to a stranger, or face certain brutality from the men outside. But something about Boone's manner bothered her. He spoke of his grandfather's law with reverence, not lust. He loaded his rifle to defend them, not threaten them. "There's something else," she said, studying his face. "Something you're not telling us." Boone looked away. "My grandfather didn't just tell me about the law. He told me why he learned it." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Because 50 years ago, Apache raiders killed his wife and daughter. He spent 2 years with the Mescalero, learning their ways, trying to understand why. What he learned was that good people and bad people exist in every tribe, every family, every town." A crash of thunder shook the cabin, and through the window, they saw a lantern light moving toward the house. "He made me promise," Boone continued, "that if I ever had the chance to save Apache women from the kind of men who prey on the defenseless, I'd do it, even if it cost me everything." Ayana stared at him. "You're not doing this for yourself at all." "No, ma'am. I'm doing it because some debts can only be paid forward." Another crash. This one not thunder, someone kicking at the door. "Boone Carter!" A voice bellowed from outside. "We know you got them Apache girls in there. Send them out and we'll leave you be." Kaya grabbed Ayana's hand. "Sister, we have to decide now." But as Ayana looked into Boone's eyes, she realized the most dangerous part of this night wasn't the men outside. It was the growing certainty that this weathered rancher might be the most honorable man she'd ever met. And that terrified her more than anything Hargrove could do. The approaching hoofbeats grew louder, cutting through the tension like a blade. Hargrove spun toward the window, his hand still hovering over his gun. "Who the hell?" "Deputy Marshal Jim Fletcher," Boone said, recognizing the distinctive rhythm of the horse's gait. "Territorial law enforcement." Hargrove's face went white. A deputy marshal complicated everything, especially if he witnessed what was about to happen in this cabin. Fletcher's voice boomed through the storm before he even dismounted. "Hargrove, I know you're in there. Come out with your hands visible." "Damn!" one of Hargrove's men whispered. "Boss, we need to go now." But Hargrove wasn't backing down. His eyes burned with the fury of a man who'd traveled 3 days through hell, only to watch his prize slip through his fingers. We finish this first. Those girls are coming with us. No, Ayana said, stepping closer to Boone. We're not. She turned to face Kaya, who nodded slowly, understanding what had to happen. Boone Carter, Ayana said, her voice carrying the formal cadence of tribal ceremonies. I take you as husband under the sacred laws of my ancestors and the territorial laws of this land. I offer my protection in exchange for yours, my loyalty in exchange for yours, until death or mutual release parts us. Kaya stepped forward, her young voice surprisingly strong. Boone Carter, I take you as husband under the sacred laws of my ancestors and the territorial laws of this land. I offer my protection in exchange for yours, my loyalty in exchange for yours, until death or mutual release parts us. Boone looked into their eyes, not with desire, but with solemn understanding of the vow they were all taking. Ayana and Kaya, I take you both as wives under tribal law and territorial law. I offer my protection in exchange for yours, my loyalty in exchange for yours, until death or mutual release parts us. Fletcher pounded on the broken door. Everyone inside, come out slowly. It's done, Boone said quietly. Witnessed and binding. Hargrove drew his gun. Like hell it is. But before anyone could move, Fletcher stepped into the doorway, his marshal's badge gleaming in the candlelight, his own weapon drawn. He took in the scene, the destroyed door, 5 armed men facing off against one rancher and 2 young women, the smell of violence thick in the air. Well, well, Fletcher said. Clyde Hargrove should have known. His eyes found the sisters. These the Apache women you've been tracking? They're fugitives, Hargrove said desperately. Off-reservation land without permits. Actually, Fletcher said, holstering his gun, they're not. He reached into his coat and pulled out an official document. Just rode in from territorial headquarters. These women aren't fugitives, Hargrove. They're witnesses in a federal case against corruption in the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The silence that followed was deafening. What? Ayana whispered. Fletcher's expression was grim. Your father sent word to federal authorities before he died about Indian agents selling Apache women to mining camps, about officials taking bribes to look the other way. He looked directly at Hargrove. About men like you profiting from human misery. Hargrove's gun wavered. That's impossible. Your father was a brave man, Fletcher told the sisters, and his evidence is going to hang a lot of powerful people, starting with you. But Hargrove wasn't finished. With nothing left to lose, he made the choice that would determine whether anyone in that cabin lived to see dawn. Hargrove's face twisted with desperate rage. In one fluid motion, he grabbed Kaya around the throat and pressed his gun to her head. Nobody moves, or the girl dies. Hargrove, don't! Fletcher shouted, but he didn't dare raise his weapon with Kaya in the line of fire. You want to talk about law? Hargrove snarled, backing toward the rear door. Here's my law. I'm walking out of here with at least one of these girls, or she dies right here, right now. Kaya's eyes were wide with terror, but she didn't struggle. Ayana started forward, her hand on her knife, but Boone caught her arm. Wait, he whispered. You killed my whole operation. Hargrove continued, his voice rising to a shriek. 5 years building contacts, buying officials, setting up routes. You think I'm gonna prison for that? You think I'm gonna hang? Maybe we can work something out, Fletcher said carefully, his hands visible and empty. Let the girl go, and we'll talk. Hargrove laughed bitterly. Talk? Like you talked to Agent Morrison before you put a bullet in his back? Like you talked to Commissioner Bradley before he accidentally fell off that cliff? Fletcher's face went pale. What are you talking about? Oh, you don't know. Hargrove's grip on Kaya tightened. Your federal investigation isn't as secret as you think. Half the men you're after are already dead. Convenient accidents. Everyone. And you know who's been cleaning house. The cabin fell silent, except for the sound of rain and Kaya's labored breathing. Samuel Crow Dog, Hargrove said, these girls' own uncle, been killing every white man connected to the trafficking operation one by one, including their dear old daddy. Ayana's blood turned to ice. That's impossible. Uncle Samuel would never. Your daddy didn't die of fever. Hargrove continued. Samuel put a blade between his ribs because he was too deep in with us. Been feeding us information about Apache families, about which women had no male relatives to protect them. Your own father sold you to us girls. And your uncle's been covering it up ever since. Kaya made a small broken sound. Ayana felt the world tilting beneath her feet. Shut up, Boone said quietly. You're lying. Am I? Hargrove's eyes glittered. Ask them why they were really running. Not from us, from Samuel. Because he's coming for them next. Can't have any witnesses to what their father really was. Through the storm, impossibly, they heard something that made everyone's blood freeze. A wolf howl, long and mournful, cutting through the rain like a blade. But it wasn't a wolf. It was a signal. And Samuel Crow Dog was somewhere out there in the darkness, getting closer. Ladies and gentlemen, Hargrove said with a savage grin, I believe your real problem just arrived. Fletcher spun toward the window, trying to see into the storm last night. That's when Hargrove made his move. But he wasn't the only one who'd been waiting for the right moment. Kaya drove her elbow hard into Hargrove's ribs, just as he tried to drag her toward the back door. The impact made him grunt and loosen his grip for a split second, long enough for her to twist away from his gun. Fletcher's shot boomed through the cabin, catching Hargrove in the shoulder and spinning him around. But the wounded man still had fight in him. He raised his pistol toward Ayana, his face a mask of blood and fury. Boone's rifle cracked. Hargrove crumpled to the floor. Is he dead? Kaya whispered. Pressing against the wall, Fletcher knelt beside Hargrove, checking for a pulse. No, but he won't be causing trouble for a while. He looked up at the sisters. We need to talk about what he said about your father. About Samuel. Ayana's face was stone, but her hands trembled. My father was a good man. He would never. Your father was desperate, a new voice said from the darkness outside. Samuel Crow Dog stepped through the broken doorway like a ghost made flesh. He was tall and lean, with graying hair braided down his back and eyes that had seen too much. Water streamed from his buckskin jacket and a long knife hung at his side. Uncle Samuel, Kaya breathed. Hello, little ones, he said softly. I've been looking for you. Fletcher's hand moved to his gun, but Samuel made no threatening gestures. Instead, he walked to Hargrove's unconscious form and stared down at him with disgust. This one spoke truth, but not all of it, Samuel said. Your father did give information to these men, but not willingly. What do you mean? Ayana demanded. Samuel's weathered face creased with pain. They took your mother first, said they would sell her to the mining camps, unless your father helped them identify families with daughters of age. He tried to resist, but Samuel's voice broke slightly. Your mother died trying to escape them. After that, your father had nothing left but grief and guilt. The cabin was silent except for the rain and Hargrove's labored breathing. I found your father 3 moons ago, dying of the poison he'd taken to end his shame. Samuel continued. With his last breath, he begged me to find you, to keep you safe. So I began hunting the men who destroyed our family, not for revenge, for justice. The federal investigation, Fletcher said suddenly. The evidence against the Bureau was mine, Samuel said. I used your father's records, his correspondence with these criminals, to build the case. I wanted them all to hang legally, not die by my blade. Ayana stared at her uncle. But Hargrove said you were coming for us, that you were cleaning house. Samuel's expression grew gentle. "I was coming for you, child, to bring you home safely." He glanced at Boone, then at both sisters. "Though I see you've already found protection." The wolf howl sounded again, closer this time. Samuel smiled grimly. "That's not a signal, little ones. That's a warning, because Hargrove wasn't the only one tracking you tonight." Outside, in the storm, shapes moved in the darkness. More men, more guns, more danger, and dawn was still hours away. The shapes in the darkness materialized into 5 mounted men, but these weren't more of Hargrove's thugs. They wore the blue uniforms of territorial cavalry, their brass buttons gleaming despite the rain. "Federal Marshals," Fletcher breathed, relief flooding his voice. "I sent word for backup before I rode out." Captain Morrison rode up to the broken doorway, his horse snorting and stamping in the mud. "Deputy Fletcher, we got your message about Hargrove's operation." His eyes swept the cabin, taking in the wounded man on the floor, the frightened sisters, and Boone still holding his rifle. "Captain, thank God," Fletcher said. "We've got Hargrove, but there are more men involved." "The whole network is finished," Morrison interrupted. "We've been rounding them up all week. Indian Agent Bradley, Commissioner Walsh, even some territorial judges. Your evidence was solid, Fletcher." He looked at Samuel with respect. "And your source was thorough." Samuel nodded grimly. "Justice, not revenge, as it should be." Ayanna felt something loosening in her chest. A tension she'd carried for so long, she'd forgotten it was there. "It's really over. The trafficking ring is broken," Morrison confirmed, "and these men will hang for what they've done." He gestured to his soldiers. "Take Hargrove. He needs medical attention before his trial." As the soldiers lifted Hargrove's unconscious form, his eyes fluttered open. He looked around the cabin with confusion, then focused on Ayanna with pure hatred. This isn't over," he wheezed. "There are others, men you'll never find. They'll come for you." "Let them come," Boone said quietly. "These women are under my protection now." "Legal protection." Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Protection." "They're married," Fletcher said. "Witnessed ceremony, binding under territorial law." Samuel studied his nieces' faces, then looked at Boone with measuring eyes. This marriage, it was for protection only. The question hung in the air like smoke. Ayanna found herself looking at Boone, really looking at him for the first time since this nightmare began. He'd risked his life for strangers, honored his grandfather's memory, and shown more courage than any man she'd known. "It started that way," she said slowly. But what?" Kaya asked softly. Ayanna met Boone's eyes. "But I think it might be something more. If he's willing." Boone's weathered face softened. "I'd be honored to be your husband in truth, Ayanna. Both of you, if that's what you want." Kaya looked between her sister and Boone, then at Samuel. "Uncle, is this right? Is this what father would have wanted?" Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. The first genuine smile anyone had seen from him all night. "Your father wanted you to be safe and happy. This man has proven himself worthy of both." He placed a hand on Boone's shoulder. "But if you ever harm them, rancher, you'll answer to me." "I understand," Boone said solemnly. Outside, the storm was beginning to break. Through the clouds, the first pale light of dawn crept across the horizon. The long night was finally ending. But their new life together was just beginning. Want to know how their story unfolds? Stay with Narrative Odyssey for the next chapter. 3 months later, Ayanna stood on the porch of their rebuilt cabin, watching the sunset over the valley that had become her home. The broken door had been replaced with solid oak. The roof no longer leaked, and the vegetable garden she and Kaya had planted was thriving. Boone emerged from the barn, leading his horse to the corral, after a day spent mending fences with Samuel, who had decided to stay on the ranch rather than return to the reservation. The 3 of them had formed an unlikely partnership, Boone providing the land and cattle knowledge, Samuel bringing his skills as a tracker and hunter, and the sisters contributing their knowledge of herbs, healing, and traditional crafts that sold well in town. "How did the trial go?" Ayana asked as Boone climbed the porch steps. "Hargrove was sentenced to hang," Boone said simply. "Commissioner Walsh got 20 years. The rest of them got various sentences." He settled beside her on the wooden bench he'd built. "Fletcher says the federal judge was impressed with Samuel's evidence gathering. Might offer him a position as a territorial investigator." Kaya appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. "Supper's ready. Samuel shot 2 rabbits today, and I made that cornbread you like." As they gathered around the table Samuel had crafted from pine logs, Ayana marveled at how natural this life had become. The marriage that began as desperate protection had evolved into genuine partnership. Boone treated both sisters with respect and kindness, never demanding more than they were willing to give, always patient with their healing from past traumas. "I received a letter from Cousin Maria today," Kaya announced, serving the cornbread. "She and her family want to visit next month." "They're welcome," Boone said without hesitation. "We have plenty of room," Samuel smiled. "The ranch is becoming a gathering place for the families. Your father would be proud." Ayana reached across the table to squeeze her uncle's weathered hand. "He would be proud of you too, for choosing justice over revenge." "Justice served everyone better," Samuel replied. "And it brought us here, to this good life." After supper, as they sat on the porch, watching stars emerge in the clear sky, Boone asked the question that had been on his mind for weeks. "Are you happy here, both of you? This wasn't the life you planned." Ayana leaned against his shoulder, something that would have been unthinkable 3 months ago. "Plans change, sometimes for the better." Kaya nodded from her rocking chair. "We're safe. We're family. We're building something good." She smiled. "What more could we want?" Samuel stood and stretched. "I'm getting old. Time for bed." He paused at the door. "Boone Carter, you've proven yourself a man of honor. My nieces chose well." As the ranch settled into peaceful quiet, Ayana reflected on that terrible night when 2 desperate sisters had knocked on a stranger's door. They'd asked for shelter, and he demanded marriage before dawn. Now, watching Boone repair Kaya's broken chair leg by lamplight while humming softly to himself, Ayana understood the truth. Sometimes, the most shocking demands hide the deepest acts of love. If you enjoyed this gripping tale, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable Western story on Narrative Odyssey, where destiny and courage collide in ways you never expected. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to Narrative Odyssey.